All right, now that we have our character ready to go, we're going to bring in some ice blocks to place around the scene, and then we're going to go ahead and bring in a sword because the trident isn't actually released as of the making of this tutorial. So we're going to go ahead and bring in a sword from the assets file, and you guys will be able to bring in a trident once that becomes released and part of the asset pack, and we'll update it as it goes. But for now, we're going to go ahead and use a sword. Everything else remains the same. It doesn't matter what weapon you use, but in this case, it'll be a sword instead of a trident, just so we can showcase how to use the files. So now that we're ready, we're going to go ahead and open up the Blocks Rig blend file. It looks a little bit like this. It's in the Boxscape Studio Assets folder. It's called Minecraft Blocks Rig, and you should be able to open up the blend file separately, and you'll have a bunch of blocks here, as you can see, that you can use. And they did a great job setting this up. They have a bunch of different blocks here that you can reference, and they're all 3D, 2D, whatever. They have this really nice looking flowers and stuff like that. It's fantastic. And we're going to be wanting to use this ice block here. So in order to bring this ice block into our file, we don't have to go into the append and sort of look for the ice block thing and all that stuff. It's called frosted ice. It would take a long time to actually do that. The fastest way is simply to have the ice block selected, Control C for copy, and it'll say copied selected objects to buffer in the top here. And then just go ahead and go over to your other blend file here. So once you go back to your original file, hit Control V, and that will actually paste the pose if you're in pose mode. As you can see here, I'm in pose mode right now with that bone selected. Make sure you're not in pose mode, just Control Tab out of that, and then hit Control V, and it should be saying objects pasted from buffer. This is only for screencast keys, so you might not see that, but you should definitely see it up here that says objects pasted from buffer, and you should, if I just go into wireframe mode, look for it. There we go. There's the ice block. So it's all the way over there. I just want to move it over here real quick. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit Shift S and then T for selection to cursor, which will bring my selection into the area where my 3D cursor is. And there you go. Our ice block is in the right spot. So that's perfect. I'm also going to go ahead and place it somewhere that I actually want it to be. So I want to sort of have it like on the water here, acting as sort of like a pedestal for the cake that we're going to be bringing in as well. And I want it to match the height of the stone because it's going to be about the same height. So I'm just going to sort of match it here. As you can see here, it's approximately the same now. They're sort of overlapping there. If you want it to be exact, you can actually use the increment thing here. Just instead of it might be an increment by default, change that to vertex, and then that way whenever you translate, you can actually hold Control and it will snap to a vertex, the nearest vertex that your mouse is over. So that brings the height perfectly, and the position is also perfect now because I am on the grid essentially. I'm matched with everything else. Everything's the same size too, which is great. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and place this guy along my axes here. I'm going to go ahead and bring this over to increment now because I believe that is going to be more accurate because essentially the increments are following the grid already. So that's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and do that and turn on the magnet as well, just so it's a lot easier. This will allow me to sort of just very easily copy and paste these things around by following these increments. But fun fact, if I uncheck that real quick, uncheck the magnet, you can also just move it by an order of 1 or 2, and it will follow the grid just as well if you want to use that instead. But yeah, I kind of like the fact that the increments are perfectly aligned with the actual Blender units. So that works out pretty well. And once we have this pedestal sort of set up, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the cake. I think we should bring in the cake. What do you think? Yeah, cake, bring in the cake. So going back to our blocks file, let's scroll over to the cake here. There we go. This is the cake that we want. As you notice, the cake is actually split up into several different pieces. When you eat cake in Minecraft, the cake is actually bite per bite essentially, so it'll disappear slowly. As you can see here, it just gets eaten more and more as you go along. Now, just as you noticed just now, we have the parent of every piece as the centerpiece. So you can actually grab the centerpiece to move the whole thing as each one of these other pieces move individually. So if I take this centerpiece and I want to select the entire cake, instead of using box select, which you can also do, you can also just select the middle piece, which is the parent piece, and then hit Shift right square bracket, and that will select all of the children as well. So once we have all that selected, we're just going to copy it to the buffer, copy selected objects to buffer, Alt-Tab into this other file that we have open here, and I'm going to hit Control-V to paste. Again, objects pasted from buffer, that's a good sign. And then I'm going to hit the delete key on the number pad, or I should say the period key on the number pad, and that will bring us to this area here. Now that I have this guy selected, I can go back. Now that I have only the parent selected, I can go back and go here, hit Shift-ST, and bring the whole cake over to our cursor. And now I can just sort of put him on one of these tiles here and leave him be. I think this is a good spot for it. Now we can either keep him this way and sort of have the cake get eaten this way, or we can have it like it was in the video where we sort of rotate him 90 degrees and the cake gets eaten this way. So that's it for the blocks. Let's go ahead and import our sword now, which will be done exactly the same way, except instead of opening up the blocks rig file, we're going to be opening up the items rig file. So that will look a little bit something like this. This is the items file, and it has all the items, including the armor and the weapons and a bunch of other different food items and stuff like that. This is very helpful for importing items, and these items look very good too. They're very nice. Fun fact, just to let you guys know before we go on, there is a file called new item blocks or something like that in the folder as well. I'm going to go ahead and open it and show you what it is. This is the new item blocks file with a bunch of interesting blocks here that have more detail to them, essentially, as you can see here. Also stuff that doesn't exist, like this chest set here. But like the slime ball, the ender pearl, these are all 3D blocks, 3D versions of the items that they're based on. Bucket, for example, this potion bottle, or this bowl. The TNT actually has like wiring. That's like the wiring is actually sticking out. The crafting table has like an actual like cloth on top of it, stuff like that. This 3D bookshelf is a great example as well. So this won't be relevant to what we're doing, but in case you wanted to know, this is the pickaxe that I used in Gods Don't Bleed, which I added some 3D stuff to it back in the day as well. So just so you guys know, this is an option if you guys need more detailed blocks, and you can replace them by hand if you want to. But it's not relevant to what we're doing. I just wanted to let you know that it exists in case you need to use it. So let's go back to this version of the file, the items rig file. And I'm going to go ahead and select our diamond sword here, because what other sword would I be using, right? So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-C, and then go to our original file here, hit Control-V, and again use Shift-S and then T to bring our item to our cursor here. And again, that cursor is only there because I put it there by left-clicking, so just make sure you have that in the proper spot. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in his right hand by rotating it this way. I just hit 90 and then the minus key just to get that rotated perfectly. I'm going to do this with a 45. There we go. That is good. And as you can see here, it's properly placed in the right spot. And the next step is simply to parent it to his wrist. So we're just going to go into pose mode after shift selecting his armature. And then I'm going to select his wrist.r bone, or wrist R bone, I should say. There's no dot there. And then hit Control P and then select bone, or type B for bone. This is very important. Don't use object or any of the other ones. You want to use bone, because that will actually parent it to the bone itself. And as you can see here, it works beautifully. It actually parents to the rig itself, to the bone itself, which will allow us to essentially look like he's holding it. So that's perfect. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and go to the next video where we start animating. So we're going to learn a little bit about dynamic parenting as well. I just parented the sword to his hand in the default parenting sort of manner. But in the near future of this workshop, we're going to be switching that to a child of constraint so that we can get some dynamic parenting as he throws it. But for now, I just wanted to teach you the basic parenting method, but also use that as a jumping off point for the dynamic parenting method later on. So I'll see you guys in the next video.